but one reality, upon the earth and high above, the truth that all was made from love. A love that calls to us to fly above the hills, above the sky, above the storms, above the pain, a land where peace and laughter reign. Oh, Master, may thy joy fill our days. Oh, Master, may thy wisdom guide our ways. Guide all our hopes and all our dreams, past every glow that only seems, into the light, the inner sun, into the truth that we're all one. Help us to find in every hour, in every thought, in every flower, a joy that spans eternity, the truth that makes us ever free. Oh, Master, may thy joy fill our days. Oh, Master, may thy wisdom guide our ways. So let's all sing together.
I'd like to begin with a reading from Whispers from Eternity by Paramhansa Yogananda. This is a book of prayer poems. And today's subject is, Do You Need a Guru? And so I'd like to read Yoganandaji's poem dedicated to his guru, and it is as follows. Thou light of my life, thou camest to spread wisdom's glow over the path of my soul. Centuries of darkness dissolved before the shafts of thy luminous help. As a naughty baby I cried for my mother divine, and she came to me as my guru, Swami Sri Yukteswar. At that meeting, O my guru, a spark flew from thee, and the faggots of my God-craving, gathered through incarnations, smoldered and blazed into bliss. All my questions have been answered with thy flaming golden touch. Eternal, ever-present satisfaction has come to me through thy glory. My Guru, thou voice of God, I found thee in response to my soul cries. Slumbers of sorrow are gone, and I am awake in bliss. If all the gods are displeased, yet thou art pleased, I am safe in the fortress of thy pleasure. And if all the gods protect me behind the parapets of their blessings, yet I receive not thy benedictions, I am an orphan, left to pine spiritually in the ruins of thy displeasure. O Guru, thou didst bring me out of the bottomless pit of darkness into the paradise of peace. Our souls met after years of waiting. They trembled with an omnipresent thrill. We met here because we had met before. Together we will fly to his shores, where we will smash our planes of finitude forever and vanish into infinite life. I bow to thee as the spoken voice of silent God. I bow to thee as the divine door which leads to the temple of salvation. I bow to thee, to thy master Lahiri Mahashaya, harbinger of yoga in Benares, and I lay the flowers of my devotion at the feet of Babaji, our supreme master. And this reading is from Rays of the One Light by Swami Kriyananda, which are parallel commentaries on the Bible and the Bhagavad Gita. This week's title is, Do You Need a Guru? Truth is one and eternal. Realize oneness with it in your deathless self within. The following commentary is based on the teachings of Paramhansa Yogananda. Many people scoff at the idea of having a guru. True to human nature generally, they make a virtue of their scoffing. I am responsible for what I do, they announce, responsible for my mistakes as well as for my victories. What would I ever learn if I handed over my development to someone else? To depend on another for guidance would be an act of spiritual cowardice. It would be understandable for someone gifted with some trivial ability, for instance with words, to insist on doing his crossword puzzle himself without letting anyone else help him. But supposing, even in such trivial matters, he had no such gift, what virtue would there be in refusing to learn? For that matter, moreover, where do our gifts come from? They are not a native ability. Still, crossword puzzles are hardly an important challenge. What if a person wanted to do something daring, to climb a cliff, for instance, but refused to study the art of mountain climbing? He would climb at the risk of his life. And how much more is risked than physical life in the great adventure of the divine search, where the risk is to salvation itself? Where is the sacrifice in seeking guidance? Even a mountain guide wouldn't presume to do one's climbing for one. His purpose would only be to help the neophyte to climb safely. To have a wise guru is not a sign of weakness, but of plain common sense. All the saints, aware as they are of the hazards of the adventure, agree on the importance of having a guide or guru. And these are the heroes speaking, not cowards or spiritual weaklings. Jesus emphasized the importance of having a teacher by asking John to baptize him. In the Gospel of St. Matthew, we read of his coming to John. Thus, Jesus said to John, "It will becometh us to fulfill all righteousness." In the Bhagavad Gita, the 4th chapter, Sri Krishna says, "Open thyself to those who have attained wisdom. They will be thy teachers. Ask questions of them, both verbally and mentally. Serve them faithfully and with devotion." How is the devotee to recognize one who has attained wisdom? The Bhagavad Gita gives us this inspiring description of the sage. By this sign is he known, being of equal grace to comrades, friends, chance comers, strangers, lovers, enemies, aliens and kinsmen, loving all alike, evil or good. Thus, through Holy Scripture, God has spoken to mankind. Om, Om, Om. This question of do you need a guru is really an eternal one on the spiritual path. It's eternal in the sense that it's what the spiritual path in the beginning, when I say the beginning, I mean the beginning of this incarnation, what it boils down to is this question of do I need a guru? This is a question that many of us have faced already in our lives and answered. Some of us are still exploring, some of us yet to explore. And really, it's just as Swami Kriyananda describes in the reading, that we come to a point where we realize, I need help. And that's a big step, because we don't all necessarily start that way. Even though we've been helped our whole lives, even in learning to walk, we had something to hold on to, or we had people's hands we could follow, though we don't remember this very well, but still, we see other people doing it and imagine we must have done the same. We have help in learning all kinds of things in school. Very few of us were given a blank sheet of paper and a pencil and asked to invent calculus. We learned what had come before. And this sense of I don't need anyone's help, which is an attitude that you see in children sometimes, in the terrible twos, they call it, 2-year-old children. No, I will do it myself, leave me alone, and so on. Some people grow up still sort of hanging on to that same attitude of 2 years old. And so, and I say that speaking of myself as well. There are, even if in general we may be willing, we may find in other ways in sudden inner resistance, an irrational resistance. No, 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 ben dam. And so, but there are very few people who teach themselves, for example, how to drive a car. That if you want to drive a car or a vehicle, you take lessons from someone else. You wouldn't want to just get into a car and teach yourself how to drive, although the way some people drive on the road, I wonder if that is how they learned. But still, it's just for sheer safety's sake, my sake and the sake of others, let me learn from someone who already knows so they can guide me. And so, when we realize what's at stake, when we realize what the risk is. So we get to the point on the spiritual path where we discover that it's a little bit too difficult to figure out all on my own. Sometimes I am involved in answering questions of newcomers, and people who send in general inquiries to the website. And so people will say things like, I would like peace of mind, I would like calmness, I would like happiness, and I'm having a hard time hanging on to these. One person wrote recently, my mind is full of inner conflicts, and I'm struggling to find peace. What can I do? And so we do our best to answer people according to the questions that they have asked. And it almost always comes down to meditation. Why don't you try to meditate? It is the most effective way that I have found to calm the mind and calm the heart in the shortest amount of time. Because meditation works at the fundamental essence of who we are. And so, whereas there are other tools on the spiritual path, chanting, and affirmations like we did, spiritual reading, and all of these are a great help and are not to be done either or. Nevertheless, meditation is highly effective for helping us to gain a strength that is lasting. We can read a book and be inspired, but we can't always hang on to that thought when the first trouble comes, unless we walk around with the book like Autobiography of a Yogi throughout our day, and then somebody rough comes and we hold the book up and I'm going to do spiritual reading and not have to deal with this problem. But when we meditate, we find that that inner tension becomes less, that inner fear becomes less, instability becomes less. We just are less wound up. And so becoming more relaxed, becoming more flexible, becoming more calm, we find that we're not as riled as easily. It doesn't mean it's impossible to get riled. With enough riling, maybe we will get riled, but we find that it takes more to get us agitated, and it happens less frequently. That's the sign of spiritual progress, is directional. Now, as soon as we find ourselves in that challenge, because I've said you come to the point where you say, I need help. Help with what? Help with ourselves. Because even against my will, I find myself losing my peace. I want peace, but I find myself losing it. And if we feel badly about this, that here it is, I know what I'm supposed to do and I'm not doing it, we shouldn't feel badly. Because even Arjuna says, what is that force that compels a man against his will to do wrong? And so, Arjuna had figured out the whole thing, and he was struggling with it too, so to speak. That what is that compels us against our will? And so Krishna says, desire it is, and Maya it is. And so we realize that we are up against a big adversary, Maya. And it is Maya, think about the force of Maya and us single-handedly battling Maya with a little toothpick. That's about what we have. And then it's Maya itself that says, you don't need any help. You want to stand on your own 2 feet. Be strong. Don't accept any help from anyone else. That would make my job harder. So we say, yes, no, I will stand on my own. It doesn't make any sense. So when we realize the battle for peace, which is a funny thought in itself, the battle for peace, but it is a battle of self-control for peace, is difficult, then we try it for a while and we realize, this is not clear, that something that I tried and thought was perfect still didn't work. I thought I was saying just the perfect gentle thing and the other person burst into tears, so I must be missing something somewhere. So we say, I need help. And this is a wonderful thing because we've learned enough to know that we don't know anything. It's a very important point. And so then we say, all right, who will help me? I want help. Because we're rising above just the everyday level of common behavior, where you're nice enough if you don't hit anyone with a rock that day. That's behaving yourself. It's, we start to aim for a higher standard than that. I was a school teacher in one of Ananda's schools for some years, and I remembered visiting another school. And when I visited that school, I thought, now how is this school, which is a general public school, different from our school? And one of the reasons why I was visiting it is one of our students was thinking of possibly transferring to this other school. And so it sort of naturally had me thinking, well, what is it that you see in this school that you want to go here for? And so I looked around, and there were children, and there were teachers, and there were nice grounds and the classrooms and crayons and, basically all the things you need to have a school. And I thought, how is this really different? It was bigger. Our school was very small by comparison, but still, if you have teachers, if you have students, if you have math, you can kind of have a school. And then I saw a poster on the wall, and it said, good character. Yes, very needed. It said, good character means using a soft voice indoors. Good character means sharing the school supplies. Good character means pushing in my chair when I stand up. Good character follows me throughout the day. And I thought, and a good character? How is that good character? That's just following protocol and not getting caught. In other words, I could share the school supplies going, nee, 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 nee. I could push in my chair after I'd finished throwing it at somebody. That I could say whatever I want as long as I don't get caught. That's what good character means, doing the rough stuff out of sight of the authorities. That's what it seemed like. It was like the code of thieves. Just don't get caught and you'll be fine. It had nothing to do with the way I treat others outwardly. And even if that were the case, being kind always. What about my inner attitude, as we read in non-injury? Even wishing harm to someone. We can say, well, I didn't say anything, and that's a start. That's a big start. But still, we want to get to the point where we don't even think anything ill of someone else. Why? Because we're not supposed to? Well, maybe. But also because we find that it damages our own nervous system. As Swamiji said, why seethe in the cauldron of upset emotions and anger? You yourself are the one being cooked. You see, that's what happens when we get... That happened to me once. I shouldn't say it happened to me once. There is one out of millions of occasions that I happen to recall but this was poignant because I had received a parking ticket in Los Angeles. And I don't know if you've been to Los Angeles, but almost at the time you arrive, you get a parking ticket. Even if you don't have a car, you get a parking ticket. And it's because there are signs that say you can only park here from 12 to 1:14, except on alternate Tuesdays. And, the idea of the Tuesdays is because the street sweeper comes through, and so the idea is you're supposed to move your car out of the way and so on. So there is a logic to it. But in fact, it reminds me once of being in Los Angeles, and I was looking for a place on a very busy evening, a Friday evening, to park, to go into a restaurant, to have dinner, and my mom was visiting, and I was new to Los Angeles, so I looked up some place that we could go, and I drove there. And I was trying to find a place to park, and it was an area of town I didn't know. In fact, I was new to the whole city, so I didn't know anything. And so it was at the edge of Beverly Hills, if you know that area. And so I found suddenly this wide open street, empty, and not having any sense of caution. That's how you know that you're doing something wrong. Look at this whole street, which no one happened to find to park at. This is great. So, and I pulled up and I parked right in front of a sign that said, "No parking." No, wait for it. 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And I said, 6 p.m. Fine, no problem. So I went in and to the restaurant. And then I had to go out then I realized, oh wait, I have to make a call. So I went out to make a call, and I saw a policeman in front of my car and with his little thing out. And I said, "Oh, excuse me, officer, what's the matter?" He said, "You can't park here." I said, "Look at the sign. It says 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. And he said, "Yes, and look at that sign." And that sign said, "Permit parking only after 5 p.m. Neighborhood parking only. And I said, "I'll move it. I'll move the car." He said, "I've already begun the citation, sir." And, in the old days, they might write something on paper. Now it's all digital. As soon as they see you, it's been sent. Too late. And so I thought of arguing, but this, Los Angeles police officer was rather built for his trade, and so okay, fine. So then I said to him, it was getting later and later, it was busier and busier, whatever parking spots there were all taken now, and I said, "What can I do, though, about the car? Because I don't know where to move it." And he said, "Well, I've already given you a parking ticket, so you can just leave it here." Okay. Very good. Thank you. So, anyway, going back to that was a happy parking ticket story. I mean, given that it's a parking ticket, that had a happy ending. There was another parking ticket story, though, that I was referring about getting cooked in one's own seething emotions, where I had a parking ticket that I was really mad about, that it was one of these alternate Tuesdays except at, whatever, and if the cock crows and you can't. So I got one of those, and I was so mad about it, and I'm going to pay it, but I wasn't paying it, I don't know why, I was busy. And then I heard someone talking about how they had a parking ticket and they had forgotten to pay it, and that because they were late, the fine had doubled. And the fine, just so you know, is about $100 when it's, singled. And so doubled, it was $200. And so, these are painful tickets. And depending on which side you're on. If you're the one receiving the fees, it's very wonderful because you did nothing and the money flows in for it anyway. But because someone else did something wrong and you caught them. So I suddenly realized the parking ticket was due yesterday. You have enough warning to pay it. I ignored the warning. And so I got so mad because, first of all, I should not have had this parking ticket in the first place. It's ridiculous. I live here. It was on my own street. And now the fine is doubled because I forgot to pay the parking ticket, which of course is the parking ticket's fault. And I was so mad about it, and I can't, and I stomped up the stairs to my room, and it has this thing where you can pay online, and it type in your parking ticket, basically your idiot code, I am an idiot, I have a parking ticket. And then it came up and said $100. But it's after but they hadn't doubled the fine yet. It said you pay $100 and you're out. And I thought, wow, what an experience. I just spent about 15 minutes in my own pressure cooker over nothing. It didn't even happen. It wasn't even true. And I had this whole big experience. And I just thought, this has been very instructive. It's one thing to get mad about something and then try to talk yourself out of it. It's another thing to get mad about nothing. And so I thought, all right, let me try to remember that even something is nothing, really. There's no reason to get that mad about it. So, as I said, we get to the point where we realize we need help. And that's where the Guru comes in. The Guru also says to us that he gives us, for example, teachings like meditation techniques. He gives us teachings of the scriptures, helping us to understand them more clearly and so on. But in any case, what he does most of all is give us his power. As those of you know who have taken the Raja Yoga class, Swamiji and Master emphasize how the Guru transfers his power. This is what it means in the Gita when it says, seek the help of the wise and receive them. It doesn't mean just listen to them. It means receive that power into your heart, into your soul. Take that power into yourself. And so, how do we do that? By studying the scriptures, by listening to the Guru's words, by meditating. And the Guru starts to become a living presence inside. We start to feel, as we move in a direction, a positive encouragement. And then as we move in another direction, we feel a nervousness. And in the beginning, it's hard to tell, is this my own positive encouragement? Because as Swamiji would say, we can offer up a prayer, God, whatever you want, I'll do whatever you say. But you want this one, right? This option. And so it's then also, how do we know if it's our own nervousness that we're feeling? So first step is to get calm. And second step is to become detached. And say, either option, I will be willing to take. Why? Because I want to do the right thing. Why? Because I want to get rid of karma, not generate karma. And why is that? Because I want to get out of Maya. So it becomes easy to say, even if the hard road is the better road, let me take it. Because this easy road will end up just leading to the edge of a cliff. So it'll be very comfortable, but useless. So let me take the road forward, actually. And so that also leads us to ask the Guru questions, as it said, not just verbally, but mentally. It's wonderful because Sister Gyanamata, who is a great disciple of Yoganandaji, we're studying her life in a class that we're having on Wednesdays. She wrote to Yoganandaji that I often get your replies mentally. And though I write you many letters, you can use either the physical or the mental means of reply. And he wrote back to her a physical letter and said, I will use physical and mental means as you kindly suggest. And so the Guru will reply to you, sometimes physically through the mouth of someone else, sometimes mentally, sometimes physically if you open a book and get an answer from that page of the book. But that habit of asking is what needs to be there. Once you have a guru, you no longer ask, do I need a guru? But sometimes we forget that we have a guru. Why? Because we're still trying to do it all ourselves, just out of habit. And so we should ask ourselves, do I have a guru? Yes. So what am I doing? All by myself. Why am I thinking that it is up to me to have to solve this whole thing by myself? And so one way that this can manifest in your life was shared very sweetly by a friend of mine. She said that we spend our lives being told you have to get ahead, you have to compete, no one's going to help you, no one's going to do it for you, and so you have to get to the top of the pack with your sharp elbows and trying to trip people along the way in the race so you can win. And she said, and now that I have a guru, she said, there's somebody always on your side. Somebody always with me, always there, answering me, supporting me in things that I ask. And you don't feel alone anymore. And so I was very touched to hear that. And we can ask the Guru outwardly if he's with us in the body, but Yoganandaji isn't with us in the body. But sometimes Master would train disciples of his through other disciples. In other words, for example, Gyanamataji had disciples. Master said so. And so even though they were disciples seemingly in his presence, and of course then they would be disciples of him, that instead he was saying, no, she had, some of these disciples were hers. I was helping them through her. And obviously all of us feel how Swami Kriyananda has helped us, Master, through him. And so there was a time when Dharmini and I had a question that we were wanting to ask Swamiji, and we decided to write him an email. And so we sat at the computer together and we wrote the email, and then we sent it. And then we said, she said, well, why don't we meditate? So then we sat and meditated, and at the end of the meditation she turned to me and smiled and said, Swamiji doesn't want it. And I said, well, I don't know. I mean, we haven't received his reply, and I think he does want it, because I want it. And so, but I felt nervous, partly because she just smiled very sweetly and didn't say anything. But I was saying, no, he does want it. I know he wants it. And so let's wait to hear from him. So I think it was a week later, maybe a little bit longer, I'm not sure. We reached the... there was an open house, tea with Swamiji, and at times like this everybody would come and be at his house at Ananda Village at Crystal Hermitage and just mingle and so on. Swamiji would mingle. Eventually he would end up sitting, and people would start to just basically gather all around him, and he would start to talk. But before that, he was walking, and we happened to see him, of course, from the moment we arrived. Where is he? And so we made a beeline for Swamiji, rather delicately, but right up to him, because I couldn't help it. Wherever he was, that's where I wanted to be. And so he was talking to someone, and then when he finished, he turned to us and he said, "Oh, I got your email. I'm sorry I haven't had a chance to reply." And he turned to Dharmini and said, "But I think you got my answer in your meditation." And there was a friend who was right there, the one Swamiji had been talking to, and when he said that, she went like this. And I, at first, was overcome by the fact that, but the answer that she got was the answer I didn't want. So that's all I could think about at first. But then later, I just thought, wow, it was one thing to get a sense of, I think this is Swamiji's reply, which she didn't say. She just said Swamiji doesn't want it. She knew. But for him to acknowledge that too was quite helpful, because it encouraged me also that what reply did he send me that I didn't. And there, I didn't hear anything. So we have to work on listening, and then also the listening, though, comes through a feeling. You feel that smile in your heart. Swamiji would say that all the time. When I am right, I feel my Guru's smile in my heart. And when I am wrong, I feel his guidance, his encouragement to do better. Remember, he's always on your side. He's not there to correct you like an instructor or a policeman or anything. He's not giving you tickets. But he is always saying, try it this way, try it that way. Why? Because he's been doing it for lifetimes. As Master wrote in that poem, we met here because we had met before. And how do you recognize your Guru? The signs are given there in the Gita, that to know if someone is a true Guru, measure how high off the ground he is levitating, count the number of dead bodies he has resurrected. It's not in big miracles that there is something to be impressive. Master did resurrect a dead person, I think, too. So I'm not speaking against such miracles, but they are not the calling card. It is he of equal kindness to enemies and friends, to dear ones and strangers? This is what we saw in Swamiji. He said, I believe there is a bond of love that unites us all, and I love everybody. And we felt it from him. We saw it, and it was especially sweet to see at the end of his life people greeting him, for example, on his birthday. And so that was one of the times when there would be a long line of people, one after another, saying happy birthday, and he would bless them. And we would sometimes be near to him, and while he was doing this, and you could see somebody from, who had been with him from the beginning of Ananda, that joy that would come when he got to greet them. Then you would see someone coming up next and saying, hello Swamiji, my name is so and so, and I've read your book, and it's the first time meeting, obviously, and you'd see that same joy, that same bliss, that welcoming, that acceptance coming from him, which I just really couldn't imagine until I saw it, that you could really feel that way. And he really did. So that's one way that we recognize by the person's behavior. But also, we recognize, someone said, Swamiji, how will I know my guru? And Swamiji said, go visit different teachers, but your guru, whatever he says, will make sense. And I loved that answer because it's so practical. Because it will make sense. Now, what if you go to a teacher surrounded by disciples and what he says does not make sense? Well, it doesn't mean he's not a guru. It just may mean he's not yours. Because it makes sense to them. And so what you're looking for is somebody who makes sense to you. Where you feel a recognition. You feel an understanding. You feel, as one friend put it here, I feel so in sync. You feel that resonance. You feel in sync with the teachings. Why? Because they're your own. That's how you recognize them. And so, again, why do you recognize them? Because you have been doing this a long time. As Master wrote, we met here because we had met before. You have met your guru here because you have met him before. And so we are just picking up where we left off in the last life. And let's finish the work in this life and find ourselves free in God. God bless you all.